Hello, dear Judge Napolitano, Fox News, MSNBC, and CNN, and WFSB, NBC Connecticut News, and Fox Connecticut News. For example, Fox Connecticut News, involved with the wire crime methods and the time used simultaneously, too fast, too slow, torture, slavery, extortion. And I've been telling you guys, this is what you're going to be charged with. Because that's what it is. Identity theft, fraud, slanders, too. With those two Mendez police. And with the Domain family. On and off the Fox News, Connecticut. Leading up to the World Trade Center attack and since. And leading up to a 2006 district court case. Former director of the F.B.I. non-verbally confirmed, even if he denies it, his co-defendants, their family members, a whole bunch of natures of federal criminals, a whole bunch of other countries recorded and involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, greater than and more finite than the legal definitions of that, but then as their value as that. For example, I'm not a lawyer. The same way, when in other words, what slavery was greater than and was more finite than prejudice or racism. And it was put forth not by a color, and not just by color or /S. It was put forth by what came from some ancient times that could no longer afford sophistication from at locations, areas, and states, or at leaderships. And it made the phenomenon of modern nations not being able to afford that either. And self-valuing that, where they have, streams of people going into courts each day. I'm not just saying self-value for the means that are apparent. There is a hyper-conjunctive identity of hyper-invisible, for example, conjunctive to that which is invisible but still discernible, such as predicate value, as identity's value. And so if you change a main verb, if you put ing on a verb, the identity changes now as a noun. I mean, the identity doesn't change of the words. This is where the Trinity, even with computers, there is no, the binary means nothing without the value of the identity of value/value progression, that all the value progressions are individually grouped together as the computer. How? Why? Because since before computers, since before matter was generated, it had to be generated. So a hyper-simultaneous nature as identity, which is a relativity to positive and negative to itself simultaneously, no, as value is, as identity is. So, of course, boxing of sorts, boxing, the martial arts, and wrestling individually grouped and together, they are bound. So, wrestling is completely grappling, mostly. There's a little bit of the other fighting arts by the rules, no. And not as war, no. And, with safety measures to extents, you know what I mean? In other words, it's not barbaric. You learn to punch, you go punch someone. You see a punching video, you punch someone. See, that's what people blame too, when these kids do stupid things, when adults do stupid things. Because every time these little things go on before courts, Everyone, including the people doing the things, including innocent people. The narratives of everyone are fake to extents that are relative, where and how sophistication never has the means to use short words. And then people say, then they keep speaking. And then everyone makes allegations outside of courts. No, they already did this. This was already used remotely. And so the point is, people from schools I went to that had nothing to do with, they tried to make exceptions and exception natures. In other words, there's a Kevin Harris. I never had a conversation with him in my life. I never spoke around him in my life. One time he punched me, or he punched at me. I blocked it. And I punched him lightly. And that was it. And then, like, a day later, or 2 days, a week, I don't know, like, the same people I didn't know. I knew him from years ago. I remember him one time in a bus on a corner on Hangdog and Highcrest Street. The corners of Hangdog and Highcrest Street and other corners in Wethersfield have F.B.I. and CIA and police corruption, as people also involved with overt criminal enterprises. Plural, as victims though. But how everyone is victim predators if you go by their sequence nature with fact treatments. So they force people to say bad things about others because people won't permit people a quality of fact treatment nature. All exceptions and exceptions are demonstration of the same thing too, because we have never had honest sciences that and how there is increasing relevance and value by where and how there are distinct natures of exceptions and of exception nature. See, increasingly it is self-valued how they can't, any kind of a legitimate excuse, not which, a truth used for a lie. Why and how they have to act as knaves, Knave, with time treatments, with their A, therefore B treatments, and with their value treatments, including identities values and sequence value and databases information value. And see, they have everybody speaking through others, where and how simultaneously, increasingly, everyone's attaching everyone to other fake words. They're the same people that put everyone away for so many years. People I don't even know. In other words, a lot was shown because I've been asking since before the World Trade Center attack, relevant to the confessions that were made by little kids when I was in grammar school, that I didn't know the extent of the significance of, but I valued it for its relativity to where and how I was not being allowed to express all the revelations that a little kid could express, relevant to where and how Native Americans and black humanity, labeled black, where and how that was entertained, fake, sophistication, pretending passions and emotions. See, now kids from other classrooms pretend passions and emotions. At least they did that to me. And they'd spread lies and sequence shifts. They attach people to fake locations. They lie about, in other words, their parents are doing this at the same time. Overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and our branches of government and military, foreign and domestic, where they are differentially but constantly increasingly. And see, where that is constantly increasingly, where they use names like America, things they believe are debatable. See, know how, where, and how anyone who's entertaining slavery or Jim Crow laws and demonstrably counters to them. Everyone was and is using effectively breaching method propagated qualities of fact treatment nature, qualities of sequence nature, qualities of simultaneous nature with conviction/opinions, and with opinions/convictions simultaneously, distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously relevant to that which is hyper-invisible but still discernible. Only because it is the only invisible but still discernible identity of volume/S that is every one while being its own, which presents its identity of volume as value as nature/nature as value, in its identity of a relationship to itself. Itself has value as nature/nature as value. And the value of that, another distinct semi-nature of its hyper-invisible but still discernible one way, as its conjunction/S, as the third conjunction/S, and as exceptions and exception nature as a quality of diffusion that everything temporary is, distinctly to earth, where consciousness can be shown, where and how we are this diffusion, as five bound identities of sequence/simultaneous nature inside one identity of volume bound, but because it's the extent of it we can discern that is greater than and more finite than, while as that which is each identity of simultaneous nature individually, grouped and together, as it is per its order/S, that conjoin. So, Your Honors, they have been using the F.B.I. and the other agencies painted themselves, self-valuing what was left by our founders, for example, as victims, the same way the overt criminal enterprises came through schools and all that, and on off the campuses is collusion against every person, every identity of the schools. So when they compare the schools, that's still measured and maintained means to see discorrelation self-value by that breaching method which employed slavery before our founding parents were even born, by that breaching method that had this going since before colonization, has complete possession over all locations, areas, and states, uses of identities of names, areas, even so, leaders. So what is the person that is tactically, not provided those short words? There's a predicate act delivery system method. Predicate act/S, delivery system method upon you, member of your nation, A through Z. We're in a semi-ancient trap. Thank God. Not to make positive out of negative. Anyone could do that from dumb to genius. That's all that's been done now. Boxing is fun though, because evolution science only feels like game/S. Evolution's fruits and gifts and means from nowhere, including and especially regarding how we are fact treatment nature and why simultaneously. Why is there hot and cold? The simultaneous. And why else? Because the hyper-simultaneous. Why? I don't mean you, Your Honors. I've been asking since before. In other words, they've been lying about what's on Facebook. There are exceptions because, in other words, they didn't follow the rules. Not civil disobedience. Trying to get, in other words, people pretend privacy too as sequence shifts because of where they have everyone speaking through others. And they have confessions involved with this. Also because they're lying about the natures of relationships between strangers. That's why, and they've been using little cases like, for example, they have, I don't know if he's a real judge. God help us, Your Honors. the, the databases and the treatments of the issues with the networks is recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with wire crime methods, identity thefts, and frauds methods that are greater than, more finite, while as the value of that. See, but in other words, the lawyers too are recorded with, in other words, they have theirs, but we're just supposed to defend our client, and we're supposed to do the best at that. They're leaving out the simultaneous. They're not legitimately saying that when they're leaving out sequence shifts. They're leaving out their corruption roles with the locations, and they're pretending it's only about what's in court. So there was a Trantolo and Trantolo recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed roles with this method. People said, there's a Ray Reynolds. One time they made an exception. We pulled into his driveway, or someone's driveway. I think that was his driveway, and all these cops came. So it has something to do with people with intelligence community with Central Connecticut State University. That is also involved with medical community, foreign and domestic, a whole bunch of other countries, and people pretending other. See, but they'll confess this if you get the other names involved, which is not just the branches of government and them, and the overt criminal enterprises and the private one. So, but to discern that, we have to have people follow mandated law. They've been attaching me. They use doctors 3 times. They use a triage at Hartford Hospital with people tied to a Leahy family and Kevin Dillon and Anna Dillon, involved with various natures of abuses of each age, with the locations use as part of it, where there are fact-cheating nature-oriented predicate acts, where there are roles with that which is maintained originally and still, what can't defend itself and afford the value of the Constitution unabridged. So they pretend they don't understand about free speech and freedom of expression differences, and they start making opinions about people, but they won't follow mandated law. So we can prove. In other words, the police departments are fabricating audio and video into databases today because they had the high lie progressions where no one's watching them. You think that they're not just naturally that sick, though. See, this breaching method knew that we would have to, we need police or we can't function. We need the courts or we can't function. We need politics or we can't function. But see, that's why we have to address the difference between reality and reality's reality. And the method to it, to discern this, which requires, and is a quality of fact-cheating nature, that is not being provided us at locations because it can't afford the answers, the answer/S, because it has all instances, not just being, but having been. And not just that, because then that what is manifest. See, what is manifest at the youngest ages are means to discern how, for example, they're lying about passions and emotions, people that will be and are pretending care about racial things with the youngest kids, because they are at the same time recorded consciously pretending other. This is about the simultaneously no, pretending other, but they confess, demonstrate, and record how they are criminally foreign influenced differentially, though. So when the court has legitimate means, simultaneously, increasingly, they are illegitimate. And because this is, and they are in collusion with needs to hide that and to blame other things, others and ourselves, why everyone individually grouped in together can't make basic correlation. What's the answer when someone says George Washington owned slaves? George Washington could tell no lies. He said that, so that means the Constitution is supposed to get and stay unabridged. That means that we're supposed to have free speech. That means if courts make mistakes, they're supposed to admit to it immediately. They don't make exceptions and value the exceptions being and having been employed. Oh, so now that everyone sue, they don't know how to react. Now, if they could admit that there is a perfect identity of value progression, a value/value progression is making more of itself. This is about how, matter is about how from nothing something came. That is observable, for example, is demonstrated where and how we know matter goes away. We know while we are being identities here and now. Part of our identity is gone away. Part of it is yet to come. One identity of hyper-simultaneous nature will and can only stay one way. To an extent, we know, relative to what is positive and negative simultaneously, where more hyper-positive can be made. We have to discern hyper-positive because we have to discern distinct the simultaneous nature that is not just the individual species identity of volume as a simultaneous nature, as a sequence/simultaneous nature. Sequence relative to being an individual. Now see, that breaching method knew it employed black and white in the range to syntactical chaos. Not just chaos. People love that word chaos because that's what the blank AB, no simultaneous. Those answers. This is a method that knew. See, this is a method that has complete possession over all identities of sophistication. So while they delay response, they have all kinds of. They have the lawyers too. Still. We have to have the discipline by showing what is actually recorded outside, onside. So they want to keep bringing things before courts, making mistakes, and valuing how courts have been recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed to me, to others. They put fake things in databases. They fabricate audio and video. They defend identities and group narratives and popularities and unpopularities. They individually grouped them together. The branches of government individually grouped it together. They have crime methods the same way overt criminal enterprises and private ones do, manifest with their logic. Of course, they wouldn't want. They all agree that democracy is something, or the republic is something. Something relative to what can't defend itself as equality of fact human nature, and not call other people and pretend that about others. And increasingly, while self-valuing how offensively the others are, in other words, they're sequence shifts. That's a subject. They understand what that means. They want people to stop, either keep it one subject, because it's all locations that are used. It's all those people, in other words, because of the men and women that did this. Not just their family members. Not just their parents. So that's what everyone's going to discern. There are people that are and have done unnatural behavior crimes. Lying about passions and emotions relative then to what is relative now, where I still haven't been responded to by the campus. Because they've been using the campuses leading up to and in legal cases that have nothing to do with anything else, with other things, but for where and how they're using them to put fake illusions, where and how they've been planting evidences, including fact-sheeping nature-oriented predicate acts, as wrongdoing too, because it was sustained. It's uses of all locations. That's the subject. Uses of the locations. And it's uses of what is simultaneous. That's the subject. Because what is hyper-simultaneous? That which being individual, being grouped, locations, areas, ages, sexes. See, now when we say color, now it's to an additional breaching method employed, meaning that everyone won't spoken about. They have to blame it on other things other than ourselves. All exceptions, exception nature demonstrating the same thing. When you have slavery, there's that torture. There was none of that. So want to fight about that, or there's colonization. Let's attack the isms, the Asians. Nations. In other words, you guys painted yourselves as pseudo-sophistication, and as sophistication as a range, increasingly self-valued. You know, all positive and negative treatments, inclusion, insidious natures of treatments that can't afford at one platform at any location, area, and state. You know, answers, because all the answers that were provided to you that you relied on with your logic are fake. You have to understand criminal insidiousness. You have to understand the torture that went with it, not just for the hurt. It had an agenda. It's not just to make people not read. It made everyone sickly distinctly and value how the sciences share an identity that is increasingly in demonstration to us. See, but now we have abridged sciences that are increasingly in demonstration to us. So now we have increasingly sense and sensibilities as criminal insidiousness natures, where that was criminally legalized. So good people just tried to do good things. They also got set up. Became overt criminal enterprise per their narratives. Where and how the overt criminal enterprises, the private ones and the interbranch, have the same physical delusions too at the same time, and the same sequence shifts. So now they need to lie about what they think about other people's natures, and or what they think about themselves, rather than being able to mandated laws that you follow mandated laws. Someone wants to complain about a sequence shift, you don't pretend you don't understand them. And if you ask a question, don't, then say it's too complicated. So say people don't speak clear. In other words, there's a conspiracy theory against this country. President/chief, note the difference between slash. That's why we better understand right up front. There's a predicate auxiliary system method against the Native Americans. There are recorded proofs that the interbranch are conscious that they are differentially criminally foreign influenced with the military, foreign and domestic. They're involved with identity theft or fraud. Oh, that was just little kids' things. You know what I mean? These are tied to the predicate acts now. That's why I haven't been responded to. This will show that there are courts and that there are police forms and politicians, overt criminal enterprises, private, and just that insidiousness, like per uses of locations next to body dumping spots and names where everyone, people have nothing to do. Oh, I had nothing to do with that though. Yeah, but you had other people's names used with you before. You did. So they have programs with DACA, people that are associated with DACA interstates that are also involved criminally foreign influence. For example, and roles with the locations part, where the courts recorded themselves also online with Facebook, and then pretending like, where's the integrity that the F.B.I. has? They have to pretend they believe that Marbury versus Madison, which I learned means, quote, real justice. Quote, real justice must satisfy all appearances of real justice, unquote. That doesn't mean, in other words, so that who lies about that needs to self-value how the breaching method employed knaves individually grouped and all together. And so, like, in response to the uses by the fake, positive and negative, differentially sickly against every single person, therefore grouped, therefore altogether. See, this breaching method knew that that would be self-value, because you have all these identities of logic that can't defend themselves and afford the short words. I could have told you American history by now. It's a predicate acts delivery system method, standing criminal insidiousness nature, as an identity of the ground, distinct conjunction to and as the hyper-value, the hyper-simultaneous nature, which we don't have to even agree about the name of it. But we also do, to have it as a scientific value, to have science that is true always, not denying exceptions, not valuing them denied, not obfuscating natural exceptions and fake made-up exceptions, including the economies themselves. They left out how those economies were employed. Oh, but this is a job and this is the value. If every single person gave every moment they had to education in New York City, with that people stacking everything like that, in every state at once, and don't forget they have this across there's a nervous system. The species bodies is tied down. If one part tries to lift up their part of the body, it hurts the other parts. Control our hearts and move at once. Simultaneous, we work with the hyper-simultaneous. We have evolution's fruits. All you have to do is say, we're in the same ancient trap. Oh, that's all we have to do. We're in the same ancient trap. There are time impositions, hundreds of nations. They've been entertaining themselves. They were all child abused. We're all child abused. Everyone tell each other. And what can we do too for homelessness, things like that? What are we going to do? We set up a circuit. Don't forget that locations, areas, and states are all criminally foreign influenced, and is specifically to keep, because it knew that all locations, areas, and states of every country would have to say this, and that every other country and their own would have sense and sensibilities thinking they mean the other countries, and where and how they have to speak about the other countries, because they were doing that too. Everyone's blaming other things, others, or selves, and or they're self-valuing others having done that for the real causes of negative value, nature, progressions, action, natures. If it was written anywhere that George Washington owned slaves, that's because there was a breaching method that was trying to ferret out the real narratives behind what gave them the means to feel free enough to have a plan, and have that plan just happen to preserve the republic for which we stand. That was revealed by nature itself. And it was criminally re-engineered. See Remus, see Romulus return. See, now we have to take back our campus by taking back fact-cheating nature. And because the campus has a function, this means every campus, everywhere it is, we have to use, just like you have to use a calculator for physics. So physics is one of the sciences that are still abridged. Hyperscience, we could get a calculation better by putting, before any word, put the word hyper, and after it put nature, and it forces equality and reveals and is a quality of fact-cheating nature. It can be used for a quality of fact-cheating nature, a superior quality of fact-cheating nature, which reveals identity, ground, locations, conjunction, /s. See, there are, in other words, there are all kinds of increasing, endless reasons why it is significant, why and how the breaching method employed the economy's individual, grouped, and altogether parts. Because it simultaneously employed the qualities of fact-achieving nature manifest that way, where and how we are manifest as a value/value progression, as ground ourselves, but distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously. And with the hyper-simultaneous, distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously, only increasing. So one of the ways we could help our nations, individual bodies who have to speak as individuals, because this is how nature forces it. That's why the species body is an individual. That's why and how. It's like an identity of everything at once. Figured out how, like a regular possession over everything at once, before matter. It figured out how to become a hyper possession over itself. And so it pushed part of its value as the value of self-possession. Distinct, non-distinct, and simultaneous from its parts, no. The complete hyper-simultaneous nature that matter was generated from within. This is what's demonstrated by space, with planets, with all the space between it. This is what's demonstrated by the 1/3/5 identities of sequence/simultaneous nature that each physical cell is valued with and by as a quality of diffusion. Cell nucleus, cell body, cell wall. Are three identities of conjunction to that which is self-generating, making more and more forever nature as its own. As its own. See, this is again where and how Earth has a concentrated relativity to its identity that will only stay positive and negative everywhere it is. And that's also because of where and how. So 3 years are 1,095 days. So we are, as a Trinity, an identity within our identity, which is greater than and more finite than our identity, while being our identity as a quality of diffusion that is not just our body. We are making more, it is making, but we are too, because we are making more and more positive, forever nature that is positive or negative to itself. See that strain everyone gives to work for money? Simultaneously, no. Increasingly self-valuing how there were exceptions are exceptions. See, they made slavery about color. They left out, I'll see what you do when you do that. If you want to play as a team, I would love it if you would play honest. Because I want to fight for the black rights too. But you know what? You have to attach the torture to it. You have to attach uses of it. You start discerning the predicate act, the breaching method. You start discerning how everyone was being made to blame other things, others, ourselves, like colonization. Correct, but a truth used for lies by everyone. Then so someone wants to make a quality of fact-achieving nature capable of countering the criminal insidiousness natures in defenses of their own motivations, no. Relative to what is simultaneous. So increasingly valuing, exceptions and exception nature, and how identity really is exception nature. In other words, there's one identity of exception nature that can't be made up. And people have been going way out of their way to make it up because of how all that is actually tied to Washington, D.C., and to the World Trade Center, and to where and how the negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures are maintained. Complete remote possession, or even over our director of the F.B.I., Robert Luskin. The news media says they pretend they don't believe things. Their recorded confessed demonstrated confirms, and so then that makes them tell on their judicial and executive and political sources. And they want and need that because there were a whole bunch of other countries that are here and there maintaining that. But it's through them. All they're doing is maintaining their roles with what they were raised to do. In other words, the campuses are sick. And we have a whole bunch of other countries tied. And that's what they're hiding behind in the background. And with fake conversations with me. 3 times they use the triage place. So I caught the judges and their family members associated with those triage places. You can't keep them out of it. And the same people involved with child abuses at the campuses are involved at the elderly homes and at the military locations, even the VA. See, in other words, look around. We're not going to make it about color the way the breaching method wanted us to counter criminal insidiousness nature as it. What a witch trial is about criminal insidiousness nature. The slavery was entrenched simultaneously. That's what it's about. See, if they did that and you follow that course, hey, but you were over here telling us passions and emotions, George Washington owned slaves. Our founders left us, they're like this, talk about what was left entrenched, what it was being used for. So, vaccines. We have it's in other words, just the science of it, just the process of it. In other words, we don't make negatives out of positive. In other words, obviously I have to explain it to you guys how to do it, so I'll just give you the movie. Company method, part of the game, /S. We need to get, the people need to know they could do it. We have to give our leaders means to tell the locations, areas, and states that they could set up and they could be helped to set up circuits. If they can't, if they can't drop people off to permanent locations, people that would take anything, at least put them on a circuit. And in other words, we'll stay on the page with them. We're going to bring all identity to the ground, locations, areas, and states. We'll claim them effectively having been tactically, criminally foreign influenced and having been exploited where and how self-valued that way. It's regardless of opinions because it's about the simultaneous nature. So we want the opinions. We don't want to leave it out. But things aren't A-B like that. And a whole bunch of fake things were and are having been stacked into the databases. So this is worse than extortion, preventing me and others offensively from teaching so they could keep the schools used to hide where and how they were used remotely. All identities of sophistication. Don't come with passions and emotions pretending our agencies and courts had integrity. Where and how you guys have integrity. Where how everyone has integrity. Where I have integrity. It is prevented free speech if it tries to have it. In other words, once anyone starts using what is simultaneous, and really correlation's course, it is surging through all things and even force. as the source, Foxct, the hyper-simultaneous. So that which is greater than and more finite than, while it is gaining the volumes of the individual, grouped, and no location with the group too, because of its identity of relationship to the ground. So if there are deserts, there are proofs that, so per science, it's hard to experiment with this. As the ground, what do they say, it gets colder as you go up higher from the earth. Most of the heat stays with the earth and the water. And so when you have a mountain, the water, the wind in the air goes up, and all kinds of phenomena. Maybe it gets thinner or whatever, and it drops water. So then the ground gets saturated. So it starts moving the water. See, positive value, nature progressions, acts, and natures, and evolution's fruits and gifts and means, they come from nowhere. So we could change the nature. Not even, in other words, it's not just to put people on a circuit because they were homeless or like that, and we're going to do a one-time thing. We could just do our little part. No. And we even do this all species at once. Nothing's going to mess up. Some war is going to up in the news today. Some more happened. This is how you stop the shootings too. You just need the same words, everyone on the same page. Before people start shooting others because they're sick, people are sick, even, in other words, because of what they're doing with the fake care. And they're simultaneously judging people's intelligence relative to things where and how they're exploiting exception nature. See, rather than going to the parts of it when we have to get on the same page or people are going to get hurt on it, that has to be exploited. So when we set something up, we're going to set it up with simultaneous. We're not just going to be all nations. We're going to take over the. That also changes immigrating. We're gonna admit all low ground locations tactically denatured. And we could change the nature of the time impositions. Where time simultaneously too fast, too slow. Conspiracy is leveraged against. Even you could be the most powerful leader. The modern countries have entertained reception of reality's reality. In other words, all parts of it individually grouped and together, not leaving out exceptions, not making fake exceptions, not valuing them being and having been. And because where the valuing part is where the remote part is. There are proofs that there is, even if it's only manifest. That's how it's manifest. Where everyone has been entertaining reality convictions / opinions / delusions / sensibilities, / names. There's more and more one to affinity and demonstration of how 1/3/5 identities of sequence / simultaneous nature are bound by themselves as what is greater than and more finite than that, while being it. But we increasingly ignore that which is native pure, because increasingly what the Constitution is, which is native pure, a Constitution unabridged, that has not spoke. See president, see chief, distinct, non-distinct. See president as president / chief as a quality of diffusion. See other countries' leaders as a quality of diffusion over locations, areas, and states. They had no choice as modern nations but to ally individually grouped and together against the real causes of locations, areas, and states criminally foreign influenced, forcing self-valued roles with all locations, areas, tactically denatured since before modern times, because the narratives, they knew that they would have to have people lie then so they could be used at lies in this stage. The same way they set up the facade you see on computer screens where you're playing a game or you're interacting through social media or internet media or whatever media. We're in a semi-ancient trap where quality of fact-cheating nature and positive and negative treatments simultaneously by that. And we note relative to sequence. And again, this beginning and end too, distinctly not distinguishable, it's how all ground locations are being used for this. So this was sustained against Native Americans A through Z, and against Native American tribes A through Z, and against what that meant. It means native, against everyone. This cannot afford the simultaneous to be our subject. This cannot afford to have discerned what is actually recorded / hyper recorded, and how that was actually motivated. So I'm sorry, Pandol family, I don't know you guys. And those exceptions were made for that. And with this Ray Reynolds, I don't know, never had a conversation with Ray Reynolds in my life. Those were exceptions. They were trying to make it appear other. So there were a whole bunch of people at the 3 colleges I went to that I recorded, confessed, and demonstrated, confirmed, having been involved with identity thefts and frauds where they used people from other classrooms and people you never had conversations and stuff like that. Then they pretend other. They were just sitting in a class, but never, you know what I mean? In collusion. Also with other natures of wire crimes and bad things with kids. And worse, I caught, recorded, and they hid that when I was a kid. And now those people I caught with the principal child abusers campus, like Eric Mendez, and there's different names the other Mendez brother uses, and the Mike Demain, and they say his name is Adam Demain. I never met Adam Demain in my life. Mike Demain, I only know him from making confessions to me as a stranger, and people made a whole bunch of recorded confessions, demonstration record. They're involved with the Kevin Harris, recorded involved with federal crimes with evidences and with various campuses as per his roles with the guy who was a nice guy. I never had any problem with him. My principal at the same school where I found them with the principal child abuser before that was proven off campus. And that name was already having numbers. They hid the confessions with wire crimes. They hid communications I had over the phone with fake emails. Then they've been telling everyone, and they told him too, to lie about what, to make some, like, oh, I don't understand it, or make some description of what I say, or what others say. They even get the people around people to do this by using tricks of asking them questions about things they would have no way to know about, and then using that as an answer to make things up about other people. These are people that are incapable, too, because of the only people that are formal experts on data reception, evidence reception, identity reception. They're recorded having been kept criminally foreign influenced. There are countless ways to discern this, and audiences want this discerned. But see, there are people using examples of people's behavior online and stuff like that. They're leaving out sequence shifts. They're leaving out how the courts and the police forms with the other countries have been planting evidences online, pretending passions and emotions, making fake exceptions, switching what they say in different contexts. Also, as people, there are a whole bunch of different doctors recorded tied to English teachers I had, who had people lie to them about me. So this is how they take the sense and sensibilities. They make people think things are real. And they also pretend people have phobias and things like that. No, they put themselves in people's fake conversations with doctors and with the kids at the same time, between their family members. They've been using the courts and the police forms for torture method roles. They've been offensively pretending we're saying things bad about the police. They've been pretending passions emotionally, simultaneously doing that, pretending they don't realize how they're getting over and how they've gotten over on exception nature, identity, judgment. So we have some bad people. Interbranch, overt criminal enterprises, private. Everyone's pretending that opinion means what it doesn't about democracy. You follow mandated law at locations and on time and with the right nature. You can't do that because you're caught. So there are a whole bunch of people that you guys brought up in the past that you guys that are increasingly discerned relevant to where and how I haven't been responded to by the campus too. And I told you, you already involved them with a whole bunch of different natures of organized crime. These are interbranch pretending they believe things about the privacy of their privacy, so they could hide things. They had judges, male and female, distinctly, with the male ones associated. I think it was a male. It implied by the nature of it too. In other words, I don't know the Delafair family. Those are one of the families involved with they tried to make an exception at a fire department place one time, or a campus for it, or I don't know. And they try to pretend behind my back that because they're involved with a whole bunch of people with identity theft, fraud, falsified police reports. Also, where they put the victims of the crimes and the people that were involved with it, also as innocents, into fake words. In all exceptions, exception nature and demonstration of the same thing. And they also stacked their names involved. There was a Judge Killian and Judge Smith. For Judge Smith years ago, and there's a Judge Killian who spoke fake things into a record, sequence shifts, physical delusions, spoke into a recorder. With a Dr. Zeman. I had no conversations with him. He tried, and then finally I listened to the guy. He made, so I'm trying to make an exception. I didn't agree with anything he said. I didn't communicate with him. I told him, and I didn't even tell him about the Brendan Leahy, and his father Brendan Leahy, and the rest of the other people. But they know about that because he non-verbally communicated that. Because how he first came out to me, like trying to put his head right next to me. And I'm the only person in the room. So these people have a place where they bring people for mental evaluation. They've been using those courts and the police forms for their roles, and the doctors tied to them, and the people that run the prisons tied to them, all recorded having been roles with the names that were timed instances on my street. As people timed intercities on off Trinity College and CCSU and locations next to it, timed roles with identity theft frauds instances. They'll all confess, record this to you. Rick Cianfaglione will tell you he was influenced to be with by a Leahy family, to drugs and medicines crimes on and off Quinnipiac University and on and off child campuses, identity thefts and frauds roles. Pretend I ever had a conversation with Kevin Harris in my life. He's the one that also abused such ways and more the daughter of my principal of my campus. There are other kids of another principal I had. I don't remember his name. Or, I mean, in other words, they just said it was a principal. In other words, I don't know. That was one of the people that with that phenomenon where they walk by you and they time things and they try to pretend